Adolf Eichmann. Do you plead guilty or not guilty to count 1 of the indictment?
Johann Rathmann, Staatsanwaltschaft Frankfurt. Wir sind auf der Suche nach Josef Mengele.
You are going to hang, Mr. Prime Minister. Do you want the Emperor to have the same fate?
Investigating and prosecuting war criminals from World War II was a massive undertaking, often involving multiple nations with unaligned interests. The crimes of World War II continue to be investigated today. Here are 3 movies from significant different points of view that highlight the challenges of finding justice for tens of millions of victims from the largest war in human history.
Not your usual surrender formation.
They avert their gaze for the Emperor too, sir. They are paying you the ultimate respect.
I know.
Number 3, Emperor, starring Tommy Lee Jones as Douglas MacArthur and Matthew Fox as Brigadier General Bonner Fellers. The story primarily follows Fellers, who is tasked with arresting and investigating Japanese war criminals, including the former Prime Minister Hideki Tojo. It's an underrated and often overlooked film, but one of the few that dedicates itself to both American and Japanese perspectives on occupied Japan immediately following the end of World War II. Fellers' largest task was to investigate Emperor Hirohito's involvement in his military's war crimes, which is a contestable subject to this date, and the film does justice to the complexity of this investigation, with the only real conclusion that the Emperor did play an important role in the ending of the war, which included a Japanese attempted coup and raid on the Imperial Palace to prevent the Emperor's surrender broadcast.
And the whole nation heard the Emperor tell them in his own voice that Japan had accepted the Allies' terms.
A significant portion of the film is dedicated to Fellers' romance with a Japanese woman. This certainly may bog down the film for some, but it does further add a Japanese perspective in the film. For a more in-depth look at the prosecution of high-ranking Japanese war criminals, check out the Tokyo Trial miniseries.
I need your help. So, let's see what we can do.
Das Wort Auschwitz etwas? Nein, und ich muss weiter.
Wie alt sind Sie?
20.
Da haben Sie noch nie etwas von Auschwitz gehört, stimmt's?
Nein.
Ja.
Die größte Menschheitskatastrophe gerät hier einfach in Vergessenheit.
Number 2, Labyrinth of Lies, a German production and story based on true events. It follows a young, idealistic prosecutor in 1950s Western Germany. Our prosecutor Johann investigates the case of an Auschwitz camp commander teaching in Frankfurt, representing one of the first times German officials began investigating and prosecuting their own citizens for crimes committed during World War II. The plot is interesting for several significant reasons. It's tied to the lesser-known attempts of the new Western German government to arrest and extradite both high-profile Nazi war criminals Adolf Eichmann and Josef Mengele. It also highlights how Western Germany must work with stakeholders in their investigations, including Israel and the United States. The United States still managing all German war evidence and documentation. The climate of the movie is particularly interesting, as it represents the start of a paradigm shift made possible by a brave new generation of young Germans beginning to inwardly examine the war from a justice perspective. World War II was a taboo subject in the 1950s, as most Germans were enjoying a renewed and strong economy with no desire to revisit the past. For a more in-depth look at how Germany helped prosecute and find Nazi war criminals, like Adolf Eichmann, watch the brilliant German movie The People vs. Fritz Bauer.
War kein Befehl, es war Ihre eigene Initiative. Sagen Sie endlich die Wahrheit.
Because I consider oath-breaking to be the worst possible crime and offense a person can be guilty of.
A greater crime than the murder of 6 million people, including 1.5 million children.
Number 1, The Eichmann Show. The Eichmann Show is a 2015 British BBC TV drama and available in most countries on Netflix. It provides an interesting perspective of the broadcast team televising the 1961 trial of Adolf Eichmann. Eichmann was a high-profile Nazi and one of the major organizers of the Holocaust. He was captured by an Israeli Mossad team in Argentina in 1960. Given the gravity of the trial and the testimony, the airing of the trial was a highly contentious issue for many, but ultimately it was decided that the facts of the Holocaust needed to be broadcasted to the world, both for posterity and to discourage any resurgent Nazism. The Eichmann trials would be a first of this kind event on television, and broadcasted around the world. The production team was responsible for delicately filming 112 eyewitnesses and survivors who told their stories of life in concentration camps and under Nazi rule. The production itself is a good examination of both Eichmann and the effects of the Holocaust on survivors, mainly as the film adds significant segments of archive footage of the trial, showing the stoic Eichmann listening to the victims of the atrocities he was involved in. Adolf Eichmann was hanged 31st of May 1962. His ashes were cast into the sea. The subject of hunting and prosecuting Adolf Eichmann has been extensively covered in cinema. Other movies to watch on the subject include Operation Finale with Ben Kingsley and the 2007 movie simply titled Eichmann, starring Thomas Kretschmann. Alright, I'm Johnny. Thanks for considering these movies. If you want to support the channel, please like and subscribe, or offer some related conversation in the comment section below, and we'll see you next time.